Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us in the data products demonstration. We'll get started in just a minute, so hang tight. All right, let's get this started. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Erica Moore, Senior Demographic Analyst at the New York City Population Division and New York City Department of City Planning. I am moderating this data products demonstration session, and we are joined here by 4 presenters from the Census Bureau. This is going to be a great session. We have Caleb Hopler, Tyson Weister, Maria Valdesera, and Sam Patton here to present today. So we're going to start with Caleb Hopler presenting on tips for using the ACS website. Right, you can take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Before you do that, I'm also going to remind you all from the previous sessions also to submit questions using the Q&A tab, not the chat feature, so that we can answer those at the end of all 4 presentations. And another reminder that the recordings and presentation materials will be shared after the conference. All right, sorry, Caleb, you can go ahead now.
No worries. Hey, thank you so much, Eric. I appreciate that. Thank you for moderating for us today. And I'm really looking forward to talking with all of you today. Thanks for joining our session here. So we're going to be talking about data products here and actually provide demonstrations as well. So for what I'm going to present is the 5 tips for using the ACS website. As Erica mentioned, my name is Caleb Hopler. I'm a supervisory survey statistician with the Outreach and Education Branch of the American Community Survey, ACS office here at U.S. Census Bureau. My area works directly with data users, and so if you've ever sent us questions, it's possible that I've answered some of them. And you know, in working with a lot of data users, it seems that some of our unique resources on our website are not as well known as the data products through which we offer data. So again, in this breakout session, we're going to further our understanding of ACS resources, data access, and my portion is focusing on the ACS website. Go ahead and move on. So I'm sure that most of us here today are actually very familiar with the ACS already, but in case you're not, or in case you would like to share introductory information about the ACS with your colleagues, we do have a couple of resources available that I would recommend. So we have the Introduction to the ACS webinar. This one that we have that has a recording available is from August 2024, but this upcoming August, we will have a new updated intro to ACS, so keep an eye out for that. But this has a recording and slides that you can take a look at. And also we have a course. It's a lot more in-depth. It's called Discovering the American Community Survey. It has 6 different modules and is a comprehensive course designed for all kinds of data users, really. And those that need to understand or gain more knowledge on the fundamentals of the ACS and just accessing the ACS data as well. So I'll go over our top 5 things, and I'm going to focus on, first of all, a distinction between the pre-tabulated data and then our microdata. Talk about the data products that's only available on census.gov /ACS, our website, and then talk about technical documentation of the code list and subject definitions, as well as our table list. And then I'll wrap it up with comparing ACS data before passing it along to my colleagues who will provide demonstrations on data.census.gov, MDAT, or the Microdata Access Tool from Microdata, and then also API, or Application Programming Interface. So our top 5 things, number 1. So essentially we have pre-tabulated data, and then we have microdata. So the pre-tabulated data are products that are already created for you, and typically they are in profile format, table format as well. So our profiles are commonly used by people who either are new to ACS data or that just need to get an idea of a broad understanding of a particular geographic area, because it provides a lot of different topics under the social, economic, housing, and demographic data characteristics that the ACS offers. And these profiles include our data profiles, our comparison profiles, selected population profiles, and then our narrative profiles as well. And we also have tables which are a lot more detailed. They offer more of a specific, more precise look at a particular subject compared to selected geographies. And these table types include our detailed tables, subject tables, ranking tables, and geographic comparison tables. Actually, what I'm going to get into on our top 5 things, number 2, our next slide here, is that data that is only found on the ACS website are the narrative profiles, as well as the ranking tables and geographic comparison tables. I'm going to highlight those in just a second here. But before I do, let me talk about microdata. So our PUMs, or public use microdata sample PUMs files, they contain a sample of individual records of people and households that respond to the survey, and of course stripped of all identifying information. But these PUMS files are best for data users with expertise in using statistical packages, and also for if you're not able to find an existing table or profile in the pre-tabulated data. If you don't find something that meets your needs, then you can create a custom table using the PUMS files. And even though traditionally this is a little bit more geared for those with expertise in statistical packages, my colleague is going to be showing MDAT, the Microdata Access Microdata Access Tool, excuse me. And that actually makes it a lot more accessible for any data user to access microdata. So now that we have that understanding, let's start jumping into some of the content on the website. So top things, number 2, are the data products that are only available on census.gov /ACS, because some people might not realize, or I wanted to highlight this because some people might not realize that we have a lot of valuable resources on the ACS website. So let's go over table packages, narrative profiles, ranking tables, and geographic comparison tables. And I'm actually going to do a walkthrough, a demo here. And so when you go to our website, you're just going to type in census.gov /ACS. That will jump you to our website. And a great place to start when you're looking for data, of course, would be over on our data section here on the left navigation area. So I'm going to click data. It'll expand multiple new options, including a lot of different data sets. But I'm going to click data tables over here on the left, because when I do that, you're going to find all of the different table types, profile types, package types. And when you click on one, it will give you a description of that table or profile type, the geographic areas covered, and then also the tools through which you can access that data. So here I can find that the comparison profiles are available on data.census.gov and the Census API. But of course, you'll also find ones where I've mentioned multiple times, but we have like narrative profiles, where when you look at the tool, it's only available on the ACS website. Won't find it in MDAT, API, data.census.gov, or any of our other great platforms that you can access data, like different tools. But before I jump into those data products, I wanted to showcase real fast our table packages because this is a list of package data that can't necessarily be accommodated on data.census.gov. And this includes like migration flows, EEO tables. Let me just scroll down so you can see the whole list here, and a lot more. So I would encourage you to come here, take a look at the table packages that we have available. But in the interest of time, let me jump over to our narrative profiles. So I could either click narrative profiles to get there, or up at the top left, I'll also find narrative profiles. And what narrative profiles does is it gives you a nice statistical snapshot, if you will, of your particular community. So, oh, but not only is it a snapshot, but it's like a great report that you can print out and take with you. We actually find that a lot of grant writers, researchers, business owners, and then as well, just people in general need to bring a report of ACS to a meeting. They're very interested in narrative profiles. So let me just show you what it looks like. You'll have your years up at the top. So narrative profiles, we began offering this product in 2015, or at least for dataset 2015. And these are 5 years. So when I say 2015, of course, that's the 2011 through 2015 ACS 5-year narrative profile. So you choose the year that you're interested in, and then you can select your geography. And if you're looking at a particular address, you're not sure what geographic component or summary level actually fits for that address. For instance, if I'm looking at census tract and I don't know what census tract is within for that address, then I can use the use address lookup, type in my address, and it'll give me the list. But if I do know, like let's say something a little bit more obvious that you might already know, like your county. So if I'm interested in Salt Lake County for Utah, I'll find in the state and I go into the county. I have Salt Lake County, so I'm going to select that. And then I can choose to get narrative profile. So sometimes it can take a few moments to load. So I'm going to pop over here where I already preloaded profile. It doesn't take that long, but interest of time, I just preloaded it over here. And this is what it's going to provide to you. It's a standard template, so whatever geography you select, it's going to have the same makeup, but it's giving you a detailed report by many different variables in a text format, explaining the data, essentially, making it a lot more understandable and accessible versus just simply looking at a data table. And then it's also going to share visuals. So you have data tables, and then you have different graphics, bar charts, etc. And anytime you do see a graphic like this, you'll have the option to view that data in a table format. It might be a little bit easier to see the actual data points when you expand that. And anytime you're in a section, go to the bottom of that section. So for instance, this section is the households and families. Come on down and you're going to find the source. And sometimes it'll be just one, maybe a section will have multiple sources, but they will jump you over to data.census.gov. So I could click that and then it'll open in data.census.gov that particular table, but not just that one data point, but the entirety of that table. And it keeps the geography that you have selected earlier. So a good way to go back and forth between data.census.gov, looking at many different tables, as well as having a nice presentable format that you could simply Control P to print, and then just print that report and take it wherever you need to. So let me go back to the different options that we have that are only available on the website. So we have ranking tables. And so if you're interested in a particular topic and you want to rank that amongst different states and compare it as well to at the national level, then you can come over to the ranking tables. And like if I was interested in, for instance, health insurance for Utah, so I could type in health and immediately I get health insurance tables, I have 3 different options, and I like this one, percent without health insurance coverage. Because let's just say that's exactly what I need. So I see that that table ID is R2701. Simply download the table, and you can compare, and it'll be in ranked format of the states, and then compare it. And just keep in mind that at the very top of the spreadsheet where there will be a geography selector, just keep changing that selector for states to compare against. But I highlighted the table ID because with R2701, we also have a geographic comparison tables, and that's going to follow the same topics are going to follow the same table ID. It'll just be GCT 2701 for percent without health insurance coverage. I'll share that in just a second. But ranking tables is, again, just at the state level. And if you're wanting to drill further down, like I said, we were looking at Utah for health insurance data. And now that we have compared against a couple different states, maybe we want to drill down within Utah, look around Salt Lake County, or look around Salt Lake City and surrounding areas. Then that's when you want to use the geographic comparison tables. It's not going to have it in ranked format, but you can definitely type in health insurance, for example. I'm going to see GCT 2701 for percent without health insurance coverage, and then proceed accordingly. So you just click download, and you would have all the data at your fingertips for many different geographic areas throughout the United States, including for Utah. So let me pop back over to my slides. Those were the data products I wanted to highlight. But for our top 5 things, number 3, I want to showcase our technical documentation, which is actually spills over a little bit in top 5 things, number 3 and number 4. And that's because our technical documentation has a lot of different helpful resources that, when I'm assisting data users, can be something that makes or breaks a particular data table choice, or even a variable choice. So for instance, like, let's just say I'm well, actually, I'll give a real life example. So I was recently helping a data user who was looking at health insurance coverage, actually, and was interested in health insurance by field of degree. So the data user was also concerned with understanding the Census Bureau definition of particularly private health insurance versus public health insurance, and then also to understand how the field of degree is coded. And so that is where these products, our subject definitions, showcased on the left here on the screen, and then our code list, are going to come into play. So our subject definitions provide definitions of population and housing variables to help you understand the results of the ACS. The code list are detailed codes for variables that contain a large number of coded responses, such as ancestry, occupation, field of degree, etc. So let's take a look at what that would look like. I'm going to pop back over to the website, and I'm going to click on ACS here to go back to our main page. And going to technical documentation, our first option, code list definitions and accuracy. On the left, I'm going to find our code list and subject definitions. So the data user was interested in how did we define the public versus private health insurance. So you would click on the appropriate year that you need the definitions for. We're interested in 2023 data, so you would choose that. I actually already have it preloaded, and you would just find health insurance. So I'm going to do Control F and just type in health insurance. And I come over to health insurance coverage within the table of contents. Click it to drop myself down to page 79, where it talks about the health insurance coverage, and it's giving me all of the definitions of the 8 different options, A through H, that is actually found on the survey itself for data users to select, and for respondents to select, and it will provide more information about how responses are coded, if you will, into the health insurance coverage variable discussing public versus private as well. Now, in the interest of time, I'm just going to keep things moving. So once when we understood those definitions, we wanted the data user was interested in field of degree. So field of degree, if I were to type in field of degree, I'm going to go back up to my what am I trying to say? The table of contents. Actually, this is under quality measures. I think there's one above. Here we go. So under population variables, that's where it's going to give me the definition. I click on that, and as I'm reading through, I realize that it doesn't have the entirety of all of the variables, and that's because it's a long list. So that's why you would need to jump over to our code list, and that is also, oops. That is also on our website. You could click code list. Now I have it preloaded, so let me just pop that up. So if you were to click and download, it would look like this, and I can choose the field of degree, and it will give me the code based off of the actual degree. So code 2102 is for the computer science field of degree. And then once when we understood the subject definitions and then the coding, going into number 4, we can also download from our technical documentation area a table list to review all the tables available for those variables of interest. So what I'm going to use is our table list, and it's also known as the data product list, but these will contain columns with the table IDs, the titles, the universes, 1 year versus 5 year availability for detailed tables, supplemental estimate tables, comparison profiles, data profiles, and subject tables in one spreadsheet. So the table list was also updated. I wanted to highlight this real quick per data user feedback that we received a little while ago to include 1 year supplemental data as well. So back to our example, if we were to let me pull this up. So we come over to technical documentation. I find table shells and table list, and I can see table list right here. And when I download that, I have it preloaded. So let me pull that up. This is what it's going to look like. So again, you have your table ID, your title, the universe, the product type, and then 1 year, 5 year, and then also the geographic restrictions by 1 year data tables and then by the 5 year. So I'm interested in health and field of degree. So what I can do is click over, oops, there we go. And then I can search and just type in health. I'm gonna click OK. And now I have all of my health tables. And simply by looking down over here, 69 of a total number of 1602 records found. So I have a lot of different tables for health. Now, if I'm interested in a small geography, like let's say census tract, I know that's only going to be 5 year data because census tract, it has a geographic threshold, population threshold rather, of basically way under 65,000. So I'm going to need to look at only the data tables that are of 5 year or 1 year and 5 year availability. I will deselect the 1 year only so that anything of the 5 is available. And now I see that there's only 41 available. And then I can search through this way. Now, if the data user is looking for health insurance by field of degree, do Control F and start typing in field of degree and doesn't show up. So then type in degree. You keep looking, it doesn't show up. That's when the data user was understanding quickly that that was not available. So that's when a good example of moving over into the microdata to create a custom table that would suit your needs because it's not available in the pre-tabulated data sets. Okay, let me wrap things up here. So we also have comparing ACS data. So following this link on the screen, I can also just jump over. This is going to be found under our guidance for data users section. So when I click on comparing ACS data, it's going to help you with guidance on comparing ACS with ACS, ACS with 2000, 2010, or 2020 census data. And it does it by topic. So I can click on the one I'm interested in, 2023, and then I'm interested in health insurance. Expand that, and it will give me the guidance on comparing. But one thing I want to highlight is that coming soon, we're actually going to be updating this page. So be on the lookout with comparisons between ACS and other Census Bureau programs, such as CPS, Population Estimates Program, Household Pulse Survey, American Housing Survey, etc. So keep on the lookout. Well, those were the top 5 things for ACS website. I appreciate your time and interest here. With that, I'm going to pass the presentation over to my colleague, Tyson, to demo the data.census.gov platform. Go ahead, Tyson.
Great. Thanks so much for all the helpful information, Caleb. Let me get my screen share set up. Alrighty. And we appreciate you all tuning into the session today. My name's Tyson Weister. So me, Maria, and Sam, we all work for Conine in the Dissemination Outreach Branch, and we're going to showcase different product demonstrations. I'm sure many of you have used, data.census.gov before. We're the official platform to access data from the Census Bureau. That means we have the most popular surveys and programs. And for the ACS specifically, we have data from the ACS on our site back to 2010. Caleb talked about a lot of the different products in terms of the products that are annually released through the ACS 1-year and 5-year. You'll see detailed and subject tables, as well as comparison and data profiles on data.census.gov. But if you're interested in diving to the detailed list of every single product that is or is not available on our site, we recommend checking out the link at the bottom. What I wanted to showcase was a brief demonstration of the site. I'm going to spend just a little bit of time with the single search bar, and then more time with the advanced search and some of the visualization capabilities on data.census.gov. And that's going to include the new chart feature that Conine showed in the plenary session. I'm going to show it live on the site. So with data.census.gov, keeping in mind that there's multiple ways to go about searching, I showcase here just a couple tips and tricks for using the single search bar. And I'm going to walk through these really quickly because I'm sure many of you are familiar with this site. But the purpose of this is just to reiterate that we recommend short, sweet keywords in the single search bar. So different topics, geographies, table prefix, or table IDs are all good things that you would put in the single search. So let's demonstrate those here. And on the site, I'm going to go to data.census.gov. You'll see the single search bar right in your face when you get there. And here I'm going to type in transportation, Seattle, WA, and press enter. What I always like to make sure I articulate to users is that anytime you use the single search, you're relying on the Census Bureau to make our one best guess for what we think you mean. So I always take a moment, look in the filters in the upper left, and see how we interpreted what you typed in. So here in this case, it translated seamlessly. And once you click at the top, the Tables tab is where you can dive into the list of tables from the American Community Survey. You can see there are 39 results of transportation tables in Seattle, Washington. And this first table comes from a question on the American Community Survey that asks about vehicles available in the household. You can see the table shows for Seattle that there were an estimated 62,178 workers aged 16 and over who live in a household that does not have a vehicle available. So moving on just to some other quick examples using the single search bar. Once you click the US Census logo in the upper left, that always takes you fresh on the landing page. Here I'm going to type in ACS, and Caleb mentioned the DP, the data profiles from the American Community Survey, and I'm going to put Washington in a geography. So this is an example where we have a table prefix. So again, look in the filters, see how the Census Bureau interpreted the search. We see a match for American Community Survey, a match for Washington, and then the tables themselves are the tables that begin with DP for data profile. So this is just a quick shortcut that me and my colleagues like to use to get quickly to the data profiles. They cover the most popular topics of the American Community Survey in estimates and the corresponding percentages. So there's over, by the way, 5,000 tables on the site as you're searching. So just keep in mind, if you're ever feeling overwhelmed with all the ACS tables, try typing ACS DP into the single search bar. I'm not going to dive more into the table itself, but wanted to show you another example of how things can play out in the single search. Here I'm typing Gini Index 2022. And I always recommend looking at the filters. And notice here that it's found a year filter for 2022, but it hasn't told us anything that it's done with Gini Index. So it didn't find a matching filter on the site. That could still be affecting the results of your search. So notice that it's giving us a large number of tables, but we are getting relevant tables towards the top of the list. So just because you don't see something in filter doesn't mean it's not doing anything at all. But do pay attention to what you're getting in the results. And in this case, the phrase Gini Index is an example of a really great search term that we recognize well and would be easier for you to get to the tables you're looking for right off the bat. The key with single search is to pay attention if it misrecognizes something or if it's giving you unrelated results. That's when you want to give up and go over to the advanced search. The advanced search is going to be the most precise way to get the data that you're looking for. And here we're going to walk through a quick example, finding educational attainment. We're going to pull the most detailed educational attainment data across 3 geographies. So what I love about the advanced search, you'll find the link just below the single search bar. We refer to this interchangeably as filters, and it's a very guided approach. So I'm going to click different words and phrases, ultimately looking for one or more checkboxes as a final selection. For the filters, you'll see geography, topics, surveys, years. Those are all compatible with ACS data tables. And I'm going to choose Idaho, Blaine County, and Congressional District 2. So on the left, you can see some of the more common geographies are already there for you. So choosing state and Idaho. Next, I'll choose county, follow the prompts, and choose Blaine County, Idaho. And the last geography I wanted is for Congressional District 2. Notice it's not here on the left. It only has the most common geographies, but there is an option underneath for all geographies. So the Census Bureau has over 240 different levels of geography to choose from. Many of those are compatible with the ACS, and the less common ones and more detailed are housed in the all geography section. So here I'm going to choose, they are in alphabetical order, Congressional District, Idaho, and Congressional District 2. Now, before I move on, I wanted to mention very briefly, in all geographies, there are 2 pathways. The default, which is what I just used, the geographic entities, has them in alphabetical order, and they are still categorized together. If you want a detailed listing of every single level individually, you can click on summary levels. There's also a 3-digit code associated with each level of geography. So the equivalent selection would be to choose option 500 for Congressional District. So just know that there are 2 ways. If you know the 3-digit summary level code, you can get there directly. So I have my 3 geographies, and I'm going to select the educational attainment and the ACS 5-year estimates. So on the left, under topics, we see education and educational attainment. And then on the left, we're going to see a survey section. And here's where you will find American Community Survey. So we currently do require you to very explicitly identify the product that you're looking for. So you'll need to choose 1 or 5 year. I'm going to choose 5 years so I see data for all of the geographies. And then I'm going to choose the detailed tables product to get the most detailed educational attainment data we offer. So I have those 3 geographies, a topic, and I optionally chose to select the detailed survey product. Once you're happy with your selections, click search in the lower right and tables at the top. And here's where we'll see different tables to choose from. You'll browse through the different titles, click something on the left that piques your interest, and then you'll see it's loaded on the right-hand side of the screen. Each geography has its own column for Idaho, Blaine County, and Congressional District 2. And then this particular table shows the highest level of educational attainment that someone 25 years and over living in these areas have completed. Now, I'm not going to go through all the buttons on the top, but I wanted to point out very briefly under More Tools, if you want to save the table, Excel in CSV will give you output that looks almost identical to what we're seeing on the screen. What a lot of users miss is they do Excel, they do CSV, and then they give up and they don't click the zip file format. So if you're looking to actually work with the data in a machine readable file and you want the GeoIDs so you can make sense of all of this, the zip is what we're seeing here. The output from that zip file is a type of CSV file. So just be mindful if you're not getting the output in it format you expect, to go ahead and get the zip download. So I'm not going to spend any more time with that one. I wanted to make sure that we spend some time visualizing data. So before that, I did a little bit of research here and I looked at data for the percent of people in Maryland without health insurance from the ACS 5-year estimates in 2023. That was 6.2%. The beauty of the American Community Survey is you can drill into small geographies. And when you pair that with the mapping and charting functionality on data.census.gov, you can visualize that in a very quick and meaningful way. So for this example, I'm going to map out the percent of people without health insurance across all zip code areas in Maryland. But you could, of course, do this for a variety of geographies from the ACS, like Census Tract. For this example, we're going to use the advanced search again. On the left-hand side, I'll choose zip code tabulation area and follow the prompts, choose Maryland, and then all 5-digit zip code areas fully or partially within the state. And then the next thing, I will choose under topics, the health insurance topic. So health and health insurance. And the geography and topics enough, you don't always have to specify a survey if you don't want to. I'll click search in the lower right. And ultimately, we're going to map and chart the data, but all of our maps and charts are based on the underlying data tables. So personally, I recommend always check out the table first before you drill into the map and chart. So here we get a message. Don't be scared if you see this. It's saying that, just giving you a little warning that you could have a long load time or your browser could freeze, but just be mindful to look for the open the table link at the very bottom right. So it's just telling you that the table has over 1,000 columns. And once we look at the table, this was the first result from S2701, selected characteristics of health insurance coverage. I can see I get the first zip code area in this column. There's a column for the total number of people who are civilian non-institutionalized. Then the total number of people with health insurance, the corresponding percent, total number of people without health insurance, and the corresponding percent. So 7.6% of people in the zip code tabulation area do not have health insurance, And as you scroll through, you can see the data across all of your different zip code areas. Great that we have this in a table, but wouldn't it be nice if we could visualize it? So once you've gotten this far, in order to make that visualization, all you need to do is click the Maps tab at the top. From here, because we've done some of our work already, things are going to happen automatically. Make sure on the left that you're clicked into the data table that has the data you want to make a map of. We already verified that in the table view. And then on the map itself, you'll want to make sure that it's set to zip code boundaries. We can see that it already visually is. And the last thing that we need to do is to tell the system, out of all of the estimates in the table, which one do we want shown on the map? So you can click the variable drop-down menu in the upper left. And here's where you can choose any of the estimates. So your first block are the different rows of the table. We were looking at the very first row, but we were looking at the last column. And that is reflected in these last two options. The site will always default to the percent columns if the table has percents. And then in dimensions, you can choose between the different applicable options. In this case, we wanted to map out the percent uninsured. So once we make that swap, our map will update here in the background, and we can see visually the zip code areas in darker shades of blue have higher percentages of their population without health insurance. And as we zoom in, we can get a better sense of these areas. You'll see street lines, street labels, and you can click in individual geography and see in zip code tabulation area 21623, 19% of the people do not have health insurance. Our new charts work very similarly to map. So if you wanted to chart this instead of mapping it, you can click More Tools and Chart. If you navigate to it this way, it's also going to remember our exact variable selection. But if you wanted to change it, it's the same drop-down menu that you saw in the maps here with the different measures, dimensions, and percent. But it's already set to the percent uninsured. And the nice thing about charts is you can sort the data in ascending or descending order. So once you make that selection, it's just another great visual way to see the data. You can turn on and off the margins of error, and you can also switch between bar charts and column charts for all ACS tables. And if you're working with comparison profile tables, is where you get the line charts. Right, well, thank you all for spending time with the demonstration. The last tip I wanted to leave you for data.census.gov is that we do provide updates like the ones that Kanine showed earlier. They're available on our development updates page for you to stay updated with the latest information for data.census.gov. And with that, I will transition things over to Maria. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tyson. I am going to share my screen now. Here we go. Hi, everyone. I am a program analyst here in the Dissemination Outreach Branch. I'm just going to briefly cover the Microdata Access tool today. So I'm just going to do an overview of the Microdata Access tool, including just, what to expect in terms of data availability. We're going to jump into our demo, and then I'm just going to highlight a quick resource before we go on to Sam's portion of the presentation. So when we get started with the overview, when it comes to the difference in the level of detail in data.census.gov versus what you'll see in the Microdata Access tool, the data in data.census.gov provides those pre-tabulated tables that Tyson just showed. Additionally, there is much more geographic detail available and less topic detail available. And then we'd also like to point out that the data on data.census.gov is considered to be more precise since it is pulling from a larger sample than what is available in the PUMS file. But on the other hand, while MDAT allows you to build your own custom tables essentially from the ground up. There is much more topic detail while geographical detail is more limited. So whether you use one or the other really does come down to your needs as a data user. If you're looking for a larger geographic area, like at the state or nation level, and you're more interested in crossing a variety of variables that would not be available in a pre-tabulated data.census.gov table, then I would consider using MDAT. So within the microdata access tool, the data available from the ACS is the 1-year and 5-year estimates from the public use microdata sample, as well as the Puerto Rico public use microdata sample. So the most recent data is available from 2023. Currently, the 2024 1-year PUMS files are set to be released in October of this year, and then the 2024 5-year PUMS files are set to be released at the beginning of 2026. So in terms of geographic availability, there are, as you can see, far fewer options within MDAT versus what you'll see on data.census.gov. For the ACS, data is available at the nation, region, division, state, and public use microdata area or PUMA level. And I do have a couple slides a little bit later on what PUMAs are, so hang tight if you aren't as familiar. But I do want to get into our demo. So there's just going to be a couple examples today. This is going to be the first one that we're going to cover. It's going to be on educational attainment for veterans by race for all states, which is not something that you're going to be able to find in the standard subject table for veteran status. So that's what we're going to create today. So I am going to transition into the live site. And this is how you're going to get to MDAT, is still going through the main data.census.gov page. I found is the easiest way to do it. If you're unfamiliar, we have the apps tab right in the top right corner. And then you're going to click on the microdata option. So the actual URL, you can just type in data.census.gov/app/MDAT, and this will take you to our main landing page. I am going to zoom in just a tiny bit more. So this is where you're going to select your data set and vintage. I'm going to stay on the default of the ACS 1-year for 2023. So once you select your data set and vintage, you can hit the next button. And this is where we're going to select our variables. So we have 3 variables for this example. You can either put the variable code into the variable search bar. You can type in a keyword or phrase in the label search bar, or you can filter by topic. So if you click on that downward facing arrow, in one of these variables is going to be our veterans or military status. So that's going to be an option to filter by topic. So these are all the ones that are related to veterans, and we see military service is an option. So you can also click on these right-facing arrows to see exactly what values are contained within the variable itself. I'm going to click on the checkbox next to the MIL variable, and that will then be added to our cart. So next up is going to be educational attainment. I'm going to scroll up there and select that. That's the only educational attainment variable that we have on the site. So I'm going to click on that and add that to my search. And then finally, I'm looking for some race and ethnicity data. So I'm going to scroll down to race and ethnicity. Here are all the variables related to that. And I'm just going to select the recoded detailed race variable. So those are going to be my 3 variables. Then I'm going to go to my geographies. I do like to move pretty much from left to right when it comes to MDAT, just building on the different elements of the table. So next are geographies. So I'm going to select state out of those tabs. And then this is a newer feature, but we can now select all. So that's going to select all 50 states and the District of Columbia. So that'll also be added to our table once we get to the layout. But then I'm going to move on to the cart tab. And this is where you can limit the universe of some of your variables if you'd like. This is also in the next example where we're going to create our recodes for certain variables. So for example, if I want to just have the on active duty in the past but not now value selected, I can deselect all these other options and those will not appear in my table. Likewise, if I went to the educational attainment variable and I just wanted the regular high school diploma and above values, I can also click on this checkbox over here that is next to the label section. And it's going to prompt me to select at least one value for the variable to include it in the table. So I'm just going to scroll back down and reselect my values. And there's only going to be 9 of 25 selected. So, if you're only looking for, a 1 or 2 specific values out of, a variable that has over 100, that's a great option to use too. So now that I have limited the universe of my variables, I'm then going to move on to the table tab. You can either hit the table tab or click on the view table button. And this is where you are going to determine which values are going to be in your columns and which ones are going to be in your rows. So I'm going to move my selected geographies up to the columns. I do get a warning here about the size of the table, but I am going to move our race variable down to the rows so that will clean everything up. So we have selected geographies and military service in the columns. That is reflected too, because you see that selected geographies is to the left, kind of in front of the military service. That is reflected on the table. And likewise, if we expand these columns here, that is where we're going to see our educational attainment variable and then our race variable, again, with educational attainment above and then the major race groups. So I did want to highlight the panel on the side here. This is where you can change the weighting of your table as well as the vintage. You can also collapse this panel and view the table a bit better. Again, you can also expand these columns to see the full labels that are associated with these variables. So that is the first example. I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint. And I did want to quickly talk about the public use microdata areas or PUMAs. So those are defined areas with 100,000 population or more. They can be used to identify most cities of 100,000 or more and many metro areas. And identifiers are unique within each state and they do nest within states and do cover the entire nation. And they are defined after each decennial census, and census tracts and counties are the building blocks of PUMAs. So this is just a visualization of how PUMAs can cover, the different areas across the country. So for example, 3 PUMAs can cover 1 county, which is in Loudoun County, Virginia, but then only 1 PUMA can also cover 3 different counties in Virginia. So it is more based on the population size. Now, I did want to jump back into our demo, and we are going to be looking at health insurance status by sex and custom age groups for PUMAs. So this is a table that you might see on data.census.gov, and it has, those age groups of 45 to 54, 55 to 64, et cetera, but it does not provide the ability to customize those age groups. So that is where we are going to go into MDAT once again. And I am going to close out this tab and I'm just going to go right back to my apps tab so that I can open up a new one and start over with this. So for the data set and vintage, I'm actually going to use the drop down here to select the 5-year. The vintage will update to show the most recently available data. So this is also for 2023. So we're just going to click next. And again, we are selecting 3 variables this time around. So first, I'm going to use the label search bar and type in age. We see age, AGEP here. So I'm going to click on this checkbox. And when I do, I get this message that says this variable is continuous and can only be added to cell value options. Create a group recode to use this variable elsewhere. So I'm going to show you in just a second how to create this recode, but that just means that it's a continuous variable. It's not going to have those individual checkboxes for each age or single year of age. So next up, I'm going to search for sex in my label search bar, going to add that variable as well. And then I'm going to type in health insurance into my search bar, and you see HICOV, health insurance coverage recode. I'm going to add that to my search as well. So those are going to be our 3 variables. With geographies, the way to find PUMAs on MDAT is just selecting the PUMA tab. Then you'll get a list of states that are available. I'm going to select Florida. And these will be in alphabetical order. So I am going to scroll down and select my 6 PUMAs for Lee County. So those are all going to be added once I get to my table tab. But moving directly onto the cart, this is where you are going to create your recode. So I'm going to select our age variable over to the left here. And you can see that this just looks a little bit different than what we saw previously. There's only 2 check boxes. And instead of having, those individual selections, we just have 1 to 99 years, which is the top coded value for age. So I'm going to click on the Create Custom Group button. And you can do you can create recodes a couple different ways. I'm going to show you. So the first group that we're going to create is just going to be under 18, and you can change these group labels to however you'd like. I'm going to keep the under 1 year option selected since that does encompass the under 18 population. And then I'm going to click on, and I'm not sure how big this is on some people's screens, but it's a pencil icon that you can click on that gives you the option to change either the minimum or the maximum values in your group. So I'm going to change my maximum to 17. So I'm going to click Save. That'll have that under 18 option. And then to lock this in, I'm going to click on the Save Group button up here. So now we see the under 18, we see the 0, and then 1 to 17 population, and then all of the other values are going to be in this not elsewhere grouped group label that we have right here. So I'm going to click on the pencil icon again, and I'm just going to keep whittling this down until I have everything grouped. So the second one is going to be, I'm getting ahead of myself, 18 to 24. And same thing, you're going to click on the pencil icon, change your maximum so that it matches your group label, and then hit save. And then to lock it in, you're going to click that Save Group button. We're going to do one more custom group like this, and then I'm going to show you the auto group feature. So we're going to do 25 to 34. I'm going to click on that pencil icon yet again, and then change the maximum to 34. So those are added. I'm then going to click Save, and you can see that that has been added to our list. Now, if we want to just do equal groups for the rest of these sections, or from 35 to 99 onward, we're going to click on the Auto Group button. That's going to provide you with the option to have equal amounts of values within each group. So I'm going to select between 35 and 99. And then I'm going to do groups of 5. And so that'll tell me that I get 13 auto-generated groups. So if you want those equal values in each group, this is a much quicker way to do it. So then you'll just hit save, and then it'll generate group labels for me between 35 and 39, 40 to 44, all the way down until we hit that top coded value of 99. So this is a lot quicker than going through if you know that you just want groups of 5 for every other group. That is how you'll do it. So then once we get to the view table button, again, this is completely up to the user, but I am going to put my geographies in the columns as well. And then I'm going to move the sex variable down to the rows. I'm going to move my health insurance coverage right beneath the selected geographies. And then I'm going to move my age recode right up to the rows right beneath sex. So this is what the table is going to look like. Again, you can see the group for total male, our recodes with all of the labels that we've created, and then it'll break it out by health insurance coverage by these PUMAs that we selected. So definitely reach out to us. We will have some contact info once Sam wraps up, but I did just want to share one resource available. Again, those data.census.gov updates also do cover a lot of the enhancements that we have made recently to the microdata access tool. So I definitely recommend checking those out. And with that, I am going to stop sharing and pass it along to you, Sam. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Maria, for that presentation on MDAT. And hello, everybody. My name is Sam Patton. I am part of the same branch as Maria and Tyson, and I'm here to close us out today with a really quick crash course on accessing data via the API. And if you don't know what API stands for, it stands for Application Programming Interface. And typically when we're pulling Census Bureau data, it's built along these three different APIs that we have available here. We have the Census Data API, we have our Geocoder REST services, and then lastly, we have our TigerWeb REST services. So today I am just going to focus on accessing data via the Census Data API. However, if you had questions on the Geocoder or TigerWeb, I do have those contact emails down at the bottom of the slide here. And Kaneen touched on these updates to the API very briefly during her opening presentation, but I'm going to cover them in a bit more detail because I'm going to use them in an example here on the API in just a minute. One of the first updates that we've added since the last Data Users Conference was this ampersand descriptive equals true option that you can add to the end of API URLs. This is really helpful because a lot of the times without using this, you're not going to know what variable you're looking at. For example, if you look down at the picture at the bottom of the slide here, I was pulling this variable dp02_0065e. You probably don't know what that means. I know I don't know what that means. So what I'm going to do is add in that ampersand descriptive equals true variable, because then I can see that dp02_0065e is actually an educational attainment variable. And that's showing me the population 25 years and over with a bachelor's degree. So this is really helpful for just not having to go back and forth between the variables list on the API and just pulling those variable labels directly into your queries. Another update that we added was our output format option. And what this does is allow you to either output your data directly as a CSV file or as a JSON file, which is actually the default without using this option. So this really saves a lot of time. You don't have to go through steps of saving the file through your web browser or anything like that. You just add in this option and it's going to directly save the file as a CSV for you. Also, I wanted to mention this option and the descriptive equals true option really go hand in hand, because you can see when I add them both together and I access the CSV file down at the bottom here where I was pulling table DP05, now I have not just the variable labels here, but that I have the the variable names here. I have the matching labels that go along with them. So it makes it really helpful when you're pulling large amounts of data as a group call, like I'm going to show you all here to do in just a second. So if you've never used the API before, you might be thinking, why would I want to go and use the API? Maybe you think I've got everything I need on data.census.gov and I'm good there. I don't need to access the API. However, there are some things that you can pull from the API that aren't available on data.census.gov. And that's what I wanted to focus on here today. Especially for this ACS data users group, I wanted to focus on accessing earlier ACS data that you can't get through data.census.gov. For example, pre-2010 ACS data. So just to show you an example of that, say I'm over on data.census.gov, I'm looking at table DP05 and I look at the year dropdown. And when I scroll to the bottom there, I can see as far back as I can go here is actually back to the year 2010. That's because ACS data on data.census.gov, the furthest you can go back is 2010. However, many of you probably know that ACS was fully implemented back in the year 2005. So if you go on the API, you can actually access similar data back to the year 2005 that you couldn't get on data.census.gov. So that's what I wanted to do today. I'm just going to have one example for you all for accessing data via the API. I'm going to access one of our old data profiles from 2005, table DP01, for all places in Nebraska from the 2005 ACS one-year estimates. And when I think about accessing data via the API, I like to think of it in three parts. The first part, I'm either pulling a variable, a single variable, or I'm pulling a group, which is an entire table. Here, I'm pulling table DP01, so I'm going to use the group functionality. Next, I think of my geography. In this case, I just picked as an example all places in Nebraska. And then lastly, I like to think of what data set I'm going to use. In this case, we're going to use the 2005 one-year estimates. So I am going to hop on over to my web browser and show you how to access this data. First of all, we're going to start on the developers page here. And I'll show you a really quick URL redirect to get here. If you can remember data.census.gov, you can probably also remember api.census.gov. Because if you type api.census.gov in your browser and hit enter, it'll redirect you right back to this page that I have open here. And on this page, you'll find lots of helpful information if you scroll down. However, I'm going to focus on this available APIs link up at the top here. Because when I click on available APIs, it's going to take me to a list of the different data sets that we have, such as ACS. And so when I click into ACS, you can see I have the 1 year, the 1 year supplemental, the 3 year data, the 5 year data, etc. And it also reminds me with the 1 year, I can go all the way back to the year 2005. So that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go back to that 2005 1 year data. So on the 1 year data page, you can see the ACS team has put together a lot of really helpful information about the ACS in general, such as the different table types. If you scroll on down, you can see variable changes between years if you're looking at 1 year to the next. But where I'm going to look is right here, kind of towards the middle of the page, where I can switch between years. Because when I click the More dropdown, here I can go all the way back to the year 2005. So when I go back to 2005, it takes me to the two table types that we have available on the 2005 API. So I can access detailed tables or I can access data profile tables. So I'm going to try to access those data profiles, and we have a couple different links to choose from here. When you get here, if you see the examples and supported geography bullet point there, that's typically where I recommend you would go, because you'll see when you click on that, it's going to open this page here where we're looking at the 1 year data profiles, and we've got a couple different links to choose from here. And what I'm going to do is work through a couple different tabs to build out my API query or my API URL. So one tab that's really helpful is going to be the examples tab. So I'm going to open the examples in a new tab here, and then also our groups list. And I'm going to take a look at that first just to see what groups are available. Because back on data.census.gov, we were looking at table DP05. However, when you look at the groups that are available in the 2005 ACS 1 year estimates, you'll see we don't have DP05, we have DP01 here. So that's what I'm going to use here is table DP01 for the 2005 ACS. So back on my examples tab that I opened earlier, this is where I can get those URLs that are going to help me build out my API query. And I was looking for all places in Nebraska. So under the geography hierarchy tab, I can see we have the place geography here at summary level 160. And we've got a couple different links to choose from here. The only difference between these links is going to be the geography portion that's described here. I'm going to use the second one because this is telling me I'm going to pull all places in all states here. And I know that because they have this asterisk, also referred to as a wildcard in the API. That basically means it's pulling all of that available data from that geography. So I'm just going to click directly on the second link here. And you can see here, it's just giving me a default variable. Really, this is just giving me an estimated total population of every place throughout the United States here. I wanted just all places in Nebraska. So what I'm going to do, and I'll make this a little bigger for you all, is use Control and F to open the search box here. And then I'll type in Nebraska. So here, what I'm looking for here is what is the state FIPS code for Nebraska, FIPS code. And I can see the state FIPS code for Nebraska is right here. It's going to be 31. And what I'm going to do with that 31 is tell the API, I don't want data for every single state. I just want Nebraska. So I'm going to change that asterisk following state to a 31 for Nebraska. And then when I hit enter on the page here, it's going to reload. Everything's cleaned up for me. And I just have Lincoln and Omaha here with the Nebraska. Again, a reminder, we're looking at the 1 year estimates here, and 1 year estimates do have a population threshold of 65,000 or more, which is why we're just seeing the two cities here. Not a lot of larger cities within Nebraska here. which is why we're just seeing the 2. So I've got my geographies cleaned up here. What I next want to do is pull all of the data from table DP01. So where we're going to do that is within the group functionality here after the equal sign. So what I want to do is get rid of the 2 variables here that it gave me by default, and then instead replace that with group DP01 and have that within parentheses. And so when I hit enter here, the page is going to reload, and there's a lot of information to look at within my browser here. And it's a lot to kind of try to parse through on your own within the browser. So what we're going to do is save this to Excel, and it's going to become a lot easier to read. And so we're going to use that output format equals CSV option that we learned about earlier. And we're also going to use that descriptive equals true option. So when I add these 2 in and I hit enter, the page is going to reload. And a lot of times I'm within a guest profile here, which is why it's pulling up the file browser for me. A lot of times it will just automatically download the file for you. I'm just going to save the file and then open the downloaded file within Excel. And so on this page here, I'll just expand things out so you can see them a little easier. There's still a lot to look at, but it's starting to be a bit easier to read, right? It looks kind of like that zip file that Tyson had showed earlier on data.census.gov. There's just a couple more things I like to do to clean it up here. The first thing is you might notice which one is Lincoln, which one is Omaha here. And this happens on some of the older data tables here. Sometimes if I'm just search for Nebraska, I can see it's kind of output in the middle of the Excel file here. So I like to just cut that column and then move it over to column A, just so I know which one is Lincoln and which one is Omaha here. And the other thing is maybe I want this to look a little bit more like a data.census.gov table, because also these variables are output not in an ascending order here. You can see it starts at 77. It should really start at the number 1. So the last thing I like to do as a helpful tip is actually transpose the data here. So what I'm going to do is just copy the data, go to a new tab, right click, and transpose it. Because now when I expand the data out, you can see it's starting to look a little bit more like a data.census.gov table. And there's just a couple more things I like to do on this one. If we apply a filter here and then sort this within ascending order, now we've got that estimated total population in our second row here. The last thing I like to do to really clean up the table here is we could filter out the annotations to just get estimates and margins of error. So if I filter this by annotation and I just remove all those annotation columns, again, now looking at this, we just have estimates, margin of error, estimate, margin of error for male, female, under 5, 5 to 9. So now it looks a lot similar to what we might find on data.census.gov. So I know I really quickly ran through the information there. I have step-by-step instructions on exactly how I pulled this and created the Excel file within our PowerPoint that's going to be sent out to you all. So feel free to check those out later at your own leisure if you want to kind of slow things down there. But with that being said, I am going to close us out with just a couple of resources here, and then we're going to get to some questions. The first thing I wanted to mention is we do have workshops available for you all. These are our most comprehensive workshops. These are 2 to 3 hours long. So like I mentioned for the API, we go a lot slower through the API than I just went through there if you want to check that out as well. We also have data.census.gov focused workshops as well as MDAT workshops, and 2 new workshops that are starting in just a couple of weeks here. One focused specifically on ACS data and another directly on economic data. So check those out at the link there if you want to join those new workshops that we have available. Also, I access the API through my web browser there. But if you're an R or Python user, I have a list of different resources that I compiled here, whether that's from the Census Bureau or third-party R and Python packages like Tidy Census by Kyle Walker or Census Dis by Darren Vengroff. I'll say Tidy Census is probably the most popular package I see among ACS data users. It's an R package. And I've compiled a couple different links here that you can look at and learn about accessing data via Tidy Census there. Also, our resources page is a great place to look if you want to access data.census.gov, API, or MDAT resources. We've got how-to materials, webinars, really short video tutorials through our YouTube channel. So check out those pages as well. And this is the last slide I had for you all, just a compilation of some different websites as well as our email addresses. So we have the ACSO email from Caleb and his team, and then the census.data email is going to be from Maria, Tyson, and myself, our team, if you have questions about data.census.gov, MDAT, or the API. Also some links for email alerts and our Census Academy here, as well as some sourcing information for our data. But with that being said, that was all I had for you all. So I wanted to say thank you all so much. And at this time, we can go ahead and get into some questions here. So I'd invite Tyson, Maria, Caleb to join us back, help answer some questions that we had come through.
Great. Thank you, Sam. And thank you to all our presenters for this great demonstration today. You know, every time I see another demonstration, there's something new to be learned, and, you know, keep adding new things, which is great. We have a few questions in, you know, the chat, and we have a few minutes to answer them. So we'll hopefully get to a few, and then here's the contact information for our presenters. If you have additional questions, you can reach out to them. So some of them have already been answered, and we'll go through those. If you want to, you know, answer in any more detail, we can. The first was, is there a profile tool that will create a summary for multiple geographies combined, like the area covered by 2 zip codes? Caleb, if you want to answer that, or I could read your response.
Yeah, I can take that one, sure. So for tools that provide summaries for geographies in aggregate, like with zip code tabulation areas, I'm only aware of the CBB or Census Business Builder Regional Analyst Edition. So for the person that had asked that question, I actually responded with the link to that tool. So MDAT can aggregate microdata geographies. We also have variance replicate estimates that can aggregate estimates across geographies. But that said, that's just with estimates and not summaries, like you asked. So for tools for summaries, that would be the Census Business Builder Regional Analyst Edition.
Great. The next question we have is the text within the narrative reports written by the census staff?
Yes. So narrative profile, the reports are essentially templates that was designed by the Census Bureau, and they get auto-populated with the data based off of the year that you selected and the geography you selected.
Great, thank you. Another question we have is, can you get 2 or 3 states or counties in one call, in the API call? I believe that is referring to.
Yes, you can pull multiple states or counties. It doesn't have to be one or all using that asterisks. You would just add in either the county codes or the state FIPS codes separated by a comma. So you can just separate those by commas within the API URL. And if you need help or anything like that, send us an email. I can help you out with some more detail on that.
Another question we have is, I missed it in the API. How do you go from the web page with the data to loading the data into Excel?
Yeah, so that was through, and I can type it out in chat for whoever had asked that question. The parameter that you add to the end of the URL is an ampersand symbol, and then output, capital F. It is case sensitive, so you do have to have a capital F. Ampersand output format equals CSV. And then when you hit enter, the page should reload, and then it will download it for you automatically. And again, I have step-by-step instructions that you can refer back to later within our PowerPoint.
Okay, and the next one we have is, does the age table count age 99 plus, or are those in not elsewhere classified? And I believe that's for the MDAT demonstration.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. The age 99, it's top coded, so you won't be able to get any values above 99. That's just to protect the respondent confidentiality. So you can still get the year Like if there's anybody that is 99 years old, you can get that, but not elsewhere classified would be in, it would be the values that are not classified within the actual variable. So it's the under 1 year and then 1 to 99. And there's nothing past that with that variable.
And I'll just add to that briefly, like if someone, by top coding, what Maria means, if someone reports their age as 101, we would actually record that in the microdata as 99, or some of the top codes are actually less. So they are in that, they are in the data value, just not as their actual reported age. They would be under the top coded age instead.
Great. So there looks like there's a few more questions, but we're basically at time. Is there anything else the presenters would like to add? Okay, with that, I am going to end this session. Thank you all for your presentations, and thank you all to the audience for joining us. This was a really great session, and the next session starts at 2:30. So we'll see you back in another room in 10 minutes. Thank you all so much.